And hello, everybody. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. How are you? And we are, of course, having another edition of the Angry Ghost Hunter, which we do the final Wednesday of every month here. And we are so proud to be joined by the crew that we are normally joined with, as we have the angriest ghost hunter of them all, Ross Allison. We have Jacob Rice and newcomer Casey Goodwin, who may be called Merle tonight because we need Merle here. And of course, we don't have a MERLE, but this is a show where we delve into everything paranormal, supernatural, the do's, the don'ts of investigating. We're not here to piss people off, but we are here to set the record straight when it comes to everything paranormal. And I'm going to introduce right now Ross Allison, who is a good friend and mentor of Spaced Out Radios. His fantastic beard coming in nicely because we got to make mention of that. And you brought a new friend tonight in Casey Goodwin. Why don't you tell us who Casey is, Ross?
Yeah, well, I've actually had the pleasure of hanging out with Casey and his team. We all kind of share the same thoughts and ideas, and we don't mind sparking a few fires when it comes to dealing with the problems that we have in the paranormal field. So I'd love to see to speak their mind. And so I reached out to Casey, and I thought he would be a great addition to fill in while we were short one person, but hey, he may be a regular. We never know. So, Casey, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me on, man. So name's Casey Goodwin. I co-founded Oregon Paranormal in about 2009 after several year fascination with the paranormal. Co-founded it with my good friend Scott Riedel. We used to share ghost stories. We kind of worked at two separate restaurants that sat next door to each other, so we'd take smoke breaks and talk ghost stories. And several years later, Oregon Paranormal started, and we started doing more organized research and investigations, and here we are now.
Cool. So what do we want to talk about tonight?
Well, I think what we're going to get into right off the bat, gentlemen, is something that is something we talk a lot about on Spaced Out Radio and in the paranormal community in general. And I think a lot of these topics that we address on this show are those conversations that don't usually get into the public. They're usually in private groups, or private conversations via DM or phone calls. And this is where we bring it all out onto the table. And one of the things that I think we seriously need to talk about tonight is paradrama. It seems to be everywhere. We hear everybody squealing about paranormal unity and para-unity and bringing the entire community together. We know that doesn't happen. So, Ross, I want to start with you on this one in regards to what is paradrama.
Well, paradrama is where there's a lot of this inner bickering with a lot of groups. Groups bullying one another, attacking each other for, various reasons, whether it's territorial issues, whether it's, who's got the best evidence, or it's a lot of different things. And don't get me wrong. I do want to state that the fact that, granted, this is we're focusing on the ghost hunting aspect, but this happens a lot in a lot of different communities out there as well. You always have those individuals that like to stir the pot and cause drama. So I know for a fact, I've been doing this, going on 30 years. And, being that I started the oldest ghost hunting group in the Northwest, I've experienced a lot of these issues with groups wanting to start fights. And it's a tough thing to have to deal with, because I've always tried to be the one willing to reach my hand out and say, hey, join us. Let's learn from each other, because I've always said it's not going to be one individual that's going to prove the existence of ghosts. We all have to work together and share what works and what doesn't. And it's hard when you reach your hand out there and you're constantly getting bit. There's only so many times you can do it before you're just going to step back and let people do what they want to do. So, it's a tough thing. And some of these groups don't even recognize when they're doing it, when they're bullying other groups or, harassing other groups. And so I just thought it's one of those things that we do need to talk about, and we do need to find solutions. And hopefully some individuals out there may be able to recognize that they could be the cause of the problem.
Hey, let's get your opinion.
So I haven't necessarily had the same problems that Ross has had or out here in the community. Now, I'm originally from Chicago. You would think it's going to be a tough city, right? But most of the time I've had drama, it's been on the commercial side of ghost hunting, and that is with the ghost tours, because they didn't like the fact that I was doing the investigations and publishing everything about the tours or the exclusive access that you get on one of these ghost hunt tours, for example. And then I would review them. So that's when I've had a couple of jabs in the ribs, is when I've kind of muscled into the tourism and given away some of their secrets or reviewed them. And that's when I've had it. The other thing is, and I put this to a challenge, and we might be talking about this later too. One of my big things is, if you're a serious researcher, you'll publish your findings with experiments and all the details so others can replicate it, right? And that's where I find most of the teams fail. They don't publish their reports to see if it can be replicated.
Yeah,
Well,
but
just like I
Jake,
said, we have to learn from each other. We
Yeah.
have to get that information out. Otherwise, we're not doing anything to progress in this field.
Yeah, but gentlemen, I'm going to throw this out there before we bring Casey in here. And this is what I've seen from a host's perspective. I'm not a paranormal investigator. I'm an enthusiast.
Mhm.
I'm an enthusiast of it all. So you guys know way better than me. But as a show host, I literally had to cut a lot of paranormal aspects out of Spaced Out Radio because of the fact that the majority of these groups do not know what to do with their investigations. They do not know what to do with their evidence. They don't even know how to really collect it. And when they collect it, they put it in a database and it stays there forever, never to come out of the dust. And Ross, I may be with an enthusiast group, say somewhere in Seattle in the catacombs down there, or the tunnels, or whatever you call them, and I may get something. I'm not sharing that with you or Jake or Casey to see what you guys got the previous week,
Right.
or the previous month. And so we have all of this evidence. I think we have more evidence than anything to predict a lot of this on trying to solve the answers. But do we really want to solve the answers? Because we're more interested in playing Ghost Hunter than we are actually finding solutions.
Well, I think that's where the media has given us a false reality as to what is out there when it comes to ghost hunting. These shows are basically publishing their results through a series, a television show. And most people don't have access to that. A lot of people don't even have access to the tools to edit and post their findings on YouTube. So, we have to be out there and encouraging people to share your findings. Don't be afraid of what people are going to say, because yes, there's going to be people that are going to believe it no matter what. And there's going to be other people that are just going to, give you the stink bomb and say, this is horrible. How dare you, present this as evidence? And you have to do it. You have to get it out there, because there are a lot of things that are going to help us to either blend our research, techniques together and say, wow, that worked for you. Let us try it and see if that works for us. Do we get the same results? And if we get the same results, then we're on to something there. So I believe publishing your evidence is so freaking important.
Very true. Very true. Let's bring in Casey here. Casey Goodwin is new to the show. And Casey, when you look at the way there's all this paradrama all over the place, I'm very curious with how you and your team down in the beautiful state of Oregon react to this.
Luckily for our team, we've not really experienced a high level of paradrama that I know that a lot of our colleagues have. I don't know if it's because we're nice guys or if we just kind of just steer clear of it. But I think as far as talking about peer review and publishing findings, I think that's a huge part. And when you have young teams that are, wanting to cut their teeth, and they're taking every bit of data from an EMF gauge and considering that's paranormal, and then coupling it with a bunch of garbled sounds on an audio recorder and publishing it as their own data, or holding back. I think what they're worried about is the scrutiny. They're worried about more experienced teams, or perhaps skeptics, or people more attuned to, audio engineering or whatnot. I think they're afraid of that feedback, and it's just kind of getting them to come out of that shell would, I think, help as far as like publishing and peer review and realizing that this isn't some sort of a competition.
Very true. And that, Casey, I think you hit the nail on the head there in regards to the fact that this isn't competition. This is supposed to be for the betterment of the investigation. Jake, when you hear Casey say the word competition, what goes through your mind?
I'm like, there's competition?
Exactly. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just, for one thing, if everything was so easily replicated, we would have scientists all over it because they'd want to go further and measure every little change in magnetic frequency, stuff like that.
Right.
Because that's how you go about with the hypothesis to the theory, which, remember, theory means is accurate at least 80% of the time. Okay.
Very true.
And we have a lot more, I'll call it true scientific rigor in it, but it's not. And a lot of times it's personal experiences. It's going to be different for everyone. And your gear's going to pick something up different. For one thing, it's not a controlled environment. You can't do science.
And people have to understand science is trial and error too.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to try and try and try again to hopefully maybe get a result, because we also learned with ghost hunting, it's all about being in the right place at the right time. So you can't make them always perform on command.
Yeah.
The how, the why, the wins, all that stuff has to be taken into account before, we could even come up with any sort of a final hypothesis or theory.
Yeah. All you can do is document it and then put it out there for others.
And it's all data until it becomes evidence. It drives me nuts when someone says, we collected all this evidence tonight and then we got to go through it. It's like, well, if you have to go through it, it's not evidence yet.
Correct. We don't really talk about that so much, though. Good point to bring up.
Or you get people who go investigate into a public place, say an old bar, a beautiful theater like where Ross is, or someone's home, and they don't get to the evidence until like 3-4 months later.
Right.
All right. That's one of the things that MERLE always brings up is if you don't have time to review the evidence, you don't have time to ghost hunt.
That's what, I see people going out every single weekend and, they're posting on Facebook, oh, we're going to this place, we're going to that place. I've heard these stories. I can't wait what kind of stuff we're going to get out of it. And if you're going into a place and you already got these preconceived notions that you're going to come out with this data, well, then you've already tainted the investigation.
All right. Yeah. All right. So my question for you guys is, how do you deal with people that attack you, especially publicly, for what you present or represent in the field?
I have a good one on this. Do you mind if I jump in?
Go for it.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so the other day, I had a gentleman in my Spaced Out Radio group who decided that the weeks previous that it would be a real cool thing to send an email to one of my guests telling them how bad they were on Spaced Out Radio. Yeah. And so this gentleman starts nagging me in my own chat room. And I said, buddy, just relax. It's entertainment. Because that's what a radio show is. It's entertainment. He took the word entertainment and absolutely ran with it, that myself, my experiences, and all my guests were full of shit. And he started making all these comments. I said, what are you not understanding? The radio show is entertainment because that's what we do. We don't talk politics. We don't talk a lot of this garbage out there. We are here to entertain the public, to give them something to listen to, some great ghost stories or some great Bigfoot stories. And this guy would not get off the word that I use the word entertainment. Therefore, everything we talk about must be fake. It's like a clickbait word that all of a sudden sets him off, that he's going to be the social justice warrior in bringing down Spaced Out Radio because I called our show entertainment. And I think a lot of the criticism out there that comes along, whether it's with ghost hunters, whether it's your techniques, whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, whatever it may be, is the fact that everybody is looking at everything in such a minute scale that they are looking to rip anyone a new one just by the wrong usage of a word, wrong usage of a piece of equipment, a wrong question that you ask that is recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And it's terrible. It's horrible because people aren't thinking anymore. They all want to have that, aha, gotcha, you bastard
Gotcha.
type moment. Right? And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. We've stopped thinking of the big picture and the overall message and are so focused on that little piece of clickbait that's going to get us that attention because we gotcha. So
how did you deal with it?
I blocked them.
We love tech.
But you know what? Here's my problem. I hate blocking people.
Yeah.
I want to have a decent conversation. If you don't like something that I'm doing on my radio show, don't talk behind my back. Come talk to me about it.
Right.
I'm a pretty open guy. Even though we got a lot of listeners, I'm a pretty open guy. But if you don't want to be logical, if you want to be that aha, gotcha kind of guy, I don't have time for you because obviously you're not thinking with logic. And that's the problem. We're not having a lot of logic and logical thoughts anymore because we want to get offended, we want to get pissed off, and we want to call you out, and we don't want any rebuttal because our job now is to make you look like a fool.
Right.
There's no more conversation.
Well, trolling's the worst, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So how about you guys?
So on the ghostly side of the house, I have had the religious right attack my site because I've covered ghost hunting and, spirits and demon type things. And they've come for me trying to shut down the site or loading the comment thing. But I mean, I work in tech, so I know how to work with my server and block a bunch of IP ranges once it gets to a certain threshold. But like Dave, I don't like to do that. But, some people just see this is the topic. He's against the Lord. And they come after me. And I'm just like, it's fine. I got tech for it.
Just that simple.
Yeah.
How about you, Casey?
Actually, about, I'd say maybe 6 or 7 months before the lockdown happened, we had a troll show up on the OP Facebook page. And basically what happened was I was doing some live updates during it was what we call a low profile investigation where we're not, walking around the place. We're not trying to interact. We're just observing the occupants of the home as they go about their daily business because we were trying to replicate what their claims were. So we had the equipment set up, but we were just kind of sitting in a corner, watching the computers, taking notes, and somebody from some team up here decided to attack us, saying it's like, well, how are you going to get any sort of evidence, doing it that way and blah, blah, blah. And, they were really, really harsh in the response. And that's one of the things that's, the internet has emboldened a lot of people to be keyboard commandos. And they react right away when they see something they don't like. So what I had to end up doing was I kind of, rather than attacking him back, I logically responded, explaining why this works and why it's important. We don't always have to be in investigation mode, walking around saying, are you here? How old are you? Blah, blah, blah. That's not what we do. And I said, if you want to talk about this in person, let's meet up and have coffee someday. And he immediately backed down and he's like, yeah, coffee would be great. And so again, it's, helping to educate people rather than, being territorial or, being reactionary and going after them because they went after you.
Well, I think that's the problem is a lot of times, a lot of people want to fuel the fire. They want to attack back because their feelings are hurt. And for me, I just have to ignore it because, once you attack them back, then it just all becomes this huge online drama that you really don't need to deal with.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's nothing you can say or do to convince somebody to, that you're not the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah, and sometimes fighting for yourself makes it look worse. That's the problem. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. I've had some heinous accusations thrown about me over the internet over the last year and a half, and I can say that when talking to my business partner, we just decided to go completely silent. We had to, because if we respond, now you get into the paradrama where everybody who heard you say the wrong pronunciation of a word is going to come at you full steam, and instead of going one on one, now it's 40 on one, 50 on one. I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but you know what I'm saying. It becomes a group fight, and you can't win that. No matter
Yeah.
what, you're the bad guy. But then again, if you don't say anything, you're the bad guy for not saying anything, and you must be hiding something.
What's like all the vitriol that Lloyd Auerbach experienced when he called out the ghost hunters when they went to the Moss Beach distillery? I mean, all like the whole ghost hunters horde, went to. It's just not fair. It's not cool.
I have to say, when it comes to the Ghost Adventures fans, I do tread carefully, because I know the Zach gang can be vicious.
They'll knife us just like that.
I mean, it doesn't mean I don't drag them over the coals.
You know what? I will say this. I'll throw this out there for a second about that. You know, they did a show a few months ago on the young lady from Vancouver who had a weird, mysterious death at the Suicide Hotel there in
Hotel.
LA. Yeah. And I will say this. That story is still very, very new and very open to a lot of people who do not believe that she committed suicide, especially her parents in Vancouver. And for them to choose that as an episode really offended a lot of people in Vancouver. They lost a lot of fans in Vancouver. And I know that there was a number of talk shows in Vancouver who were discussing that exact topic as well. I mean, do we even care about hurting people's feelings, especially the real public, all because we're chasing a bloody ghost?
It's about ratings. It's ratings. Come on.
Yeah, ratings, money. I mean, there's no educational purpose in what they're doing. And even going back to the Cecil Hotel, even the documentary on Netflix, that's not entirely accurate.
No. I mean, but that's the mark we're getting at. But one of the topics we need to talk about tonight, gentlemen, as we move on here to our next subject, is the big difference between enthusiasts and actual investigators. Now, I will tell you point blank, as I tell my audience all the time, I am not an investigator. I've had some really cool stuff happen to me over the years, but I am not an investigator whatsoever. I am someone who is an enthusiast. I don't care if I catch anything on camera. I just want the experience. I want to have fun, whether it's looking for ghosts at the local museum or along the Gold Rush Trail where I live, or whether it's chasing Bigfoot out in the forest or staring up at the skies, maybe hopefully seeing a black triangle or something along those lines. But for ghost hunting, we seem to have skewed the line and the gray area between the enthusiasts and the actual investigators. Ross, where did we go wrong with this?
Well, the problem is, and I hate to keep going back to the media, but it's the media's fault, because they give people a false idea of what ghost hunting is like. You know, they expect the thrills of having things thrown at them, or disembodied voices screaming at them to get out, or, you know, the scratches and the pushing. That for a lot of people is kind of exciting, you know, to think that those things happen in the paranormal field. So you get a lot of people out there looking for those types of adventures. And then, of course, you know, these television shows make it all look so easy, you know, for ghost hunting. You know, we also have the fact that now we're dealing with a society that is more focused on, I hate to say, the lazy ghost hunters, because they want the instant gratification when they investigate. They don't want to listen to, you know, 6 hours of recording or 6 hours of video. They want to know what's going to happen and know right away. And that just saves them a lot of work than having to review everything. So what I do when it comes to people wanting to join my team is I always have them sit down and ask themselves, you know, what is it that you're looking for? And then you kind of have to ask yourself, does it exist? Do you believe in yourself that this exists? Because I believe in diversity. I love having a team that's, full of believers and full of skeptics. That's fine. But as long as we can both meet in the middle, that makes a better team. So it's one of the biggest problems that people have this false idea of ghost hunting. And they go in with the idea that it's going to be exciting every time they investigate. And I know for us, on the show, it's boring most of the time. You could sit around for hours and hours and nothing will happen. It's like Casey said, and I think it's a great idea. Sometimes you just have to sit back and just take in the environment and watch the environment. It's not always about running around with your equipment and, provoking the spirits and asking them, hey, tell us your name. Sometimes, and our clients are a prime example of that. You have to see what the environment is like when they have these experiences. And a lot of times they're just going about their daily, chores and business. And all of a sudden they have this unique experience that they can't explain.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Casey, we'll bring you back in here. What's your thoughts between the enthusiast and the actual investigator?
I think the enthusiast, and I don't want to trash on him too much because I was an enthusiast at one point in time, but it's the thrill. People love to be scared. And, when you see, like Ross was saying, you see these TV shows and, the lights are out and it's spooky and they're talking to a wall. And then all of a sudden you hear a noise and blah, blah, blah. So I understand the need and the want to start their own group and everything. But I think what separates us from those people is, we're looking for why is this happening? When is it happening? How is it happening? We're looking for correlations. Is weather patterns, does that have something to do with it? I mean, we're looking at so many different variables, and people watching these shows only have this 15 seconds of an idea of what actually goes into an investigation or a case study. And, we tell everybody that contacts us that this is a big process. If we open a full case study, that could be anywhere from 6 to 7 to 8 months. And do they want to have us come in for that amount of time and do a full scale research endeavor? Or do they want to just have a ghost hunting team come in and just validate their claims and give them a piece of video or some audio?
Come on, Casey. An investigation can be solved in just an hour of a ghost box session. Okay.
And two Google searches.
That's true. Yeah.
2 Google searches.
2 Google searches on top of that. Yes, definitely.
But going back to that, I do see a lot of people that start as enthusiasts or start as just, the thrill seekers that end up having that experience, and it changes them. And then they start asking more questions they weren't asking when they originally got into it. And then they start discovering people like Tony Cornell and Lloyd Auerbach and D. Scott Rogo. And then they go down a whole completely different rabbit hole. And then they join us on the dark side.
Jacob, I know you're an investigator.
Yep.
I know you have been an enthusiast. You know quite a few enthusiasts. You try and blend yourself into both genres of the paranormal public. Where do you stand on this?
So when it comes to the enthusiast, everyone should have a good time. And I think that's the big thing is explore your curiosity, take these adventures and see where you want to go with it. Because like with Ross, I've been with Ross on plenty of his tours. It's mainly all enthusiasts. And what I think is important is to find the ones that you see that spark in them where they want to go further with it and see how you can help them develop. That's kind of, Ross, you hit me up even though I was already an investigator, but I took one of his tours. I'm not afraid to take a tour and be a fanboy. Okay. But I think what we need to do is just cultivate the rigor for the investigation, find those with the true interest and time to dedicate to it, see how we can nurture them along to become, to move them into investigators. But I love me a tour and a spooky party and a spooky, walking, all that stuff, history thing. Because it can lead to more. So the more people you shovel through that, the ones that get bored with it aren't that interested, they'll filter themselves out.
One,
Go ahead.
just one more quick little thing. So,
We're gonna
sorry,
fight
Ross.
this one out.
Go ahead.
Who's angrier? Is the enthusiast when they're working with clients that actually, they're dealing with a family or somebody at a home. That's when that enthusiasm needs to take a back seat, because they can do a lot of damage
Yeah.
on a real case study in somebody's home.
That's exactly what I was getting to, is the fact that, these enthusiasts have no rights going into people's homes,
Correct.
claiming to fix their problems.
Yeah.
It's fine if you're an enthusiast, you want to hang out in a haunted cemetery, check into a haunted hotel, go at it, have fun, do it, but don't get clients involved.
Right.
You're not at that level.
Yeah. Once you move into casework, you have to be a proper investigator.
I'll be honest with you. I hate casework. I absolutely do. And I've done it once, and I'm not qualified enough to know whether or not the lady who we were working with was actually a lonely 85-year-old who probably shouldn't be living alone in the middle of a forest, or whether or not she was actually having ghosts. I'm not that qualified to do that. And eventually I do believe she has moved out of the house and in to get some support, which I think her family recommended and finally convinced her to do. But that is dangerous. I mean, a lot of these ghost hunters, especially the enthusiasts, and Ross, you bring up a good point, they don't know the effects they are actually having on the people, whether it's in someone's house or place of work. And this is where we, as people in the paranormal genre, get a very, very dirty name. Jacob,
Absolutely.
let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, so if you don't know how to use the gear, right? If you don't know how to set up an investigation, do the basic research for it, if you're going to go in guns blazing with your Ovilus, your apps, and those things, aren't very trustworthy, and you're going to base your experience and what could potentially be a hosting on faulty equipment and scare a lot of people. And plus the other thing, if you've only done TV education, I mean, you go for those kinds of results. You think that's legit results. And I think we can, Casey, Ross, and I, a lot of times results are sitting in front of a computer for a day and a half, going through, listening to every burp and, backing up the video on every blip.
Yep.
And that's what would be presented to a client. Right. And it's not as dramatic as a lot of the enthusiasts, as the evidence they capture. But don't get me wrong, I still love me some enthusiasts. They're lots of fun to have around.
And it goes right back to that the lazy ghost hunting, where people just want that instant gratification, because these television shows have taught them that is the way you should be ghost hunting.
Right.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine calls them armchair experts.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that before. We say fast food ghost hunting.
But here's what I see from an outsider's perspective. And I've mentioned this a couple of broadcasts ago. When I look at a ghost hunting team, if I'm looking at bringing them on to the show, there's a few things I look for. Number one, if a team uses the word science, I'm not bringing them on. Not bringing them on whatsoever, because I know that 9.5 out of 10 of them have no idea what a scientific experiment is. So I'm going to call the BS out right off the bat. Number two, if they have a team skeptic, I'm out. I'm out, because they always got to do the pose. Like, look at me. I've crossed my arms. I'm skeptical. Like this isn't, and I'm tired of that joke manner that these teams have. If you can't be skeptical of yourself, if you don't know what you're going to do with your investigative techniques, if you don't know how to use your gear, like Jake says, if you don't know how to properly process your potential evidence, and if you have no solution on what you're going to do with that evidence once you get it, you're an enthusiast. You're there to find a good time all in around, because that's what you enjoy doing. There's nothing wrong with that, but stop being what you're not. Because if I ask you, please tell me, what is your hypothesis going into this investigation? What?
Mm-hmm.
Who?
Mm-hmm.
Derek and Lynn, who? Right? And that's what it comes down to. That's what I see from the outside. And if I can see it on the outside, I can just imagine what you guys are seeing from the inside, Casey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a daunting task sometimes. And I talk with another colleague of ours, Ben Robinson, a lot about this. But sometimes we feel like a mop-up crew going in to a situation. We had an investigation years ago where we found out that the clients were just trying to get out of a lease on their apartment. So what they did was they called us, they called a different team, they called another team, and then they called another team. And it was to the point where we found out we were passing other teams in the parking lot. And it can be daunting because some of the teams were obviously telling them what they wanted to hear. And then there were two other teams, including us, that were telling them what they didn't want to hear. So, yeah, mop-up crew.
I was going to say, I've had a similar situation too, where we had a team out here that was going around telling all their clients that they were dealing with demons. And these clients were so terrified, and yet they weren't doing anything to help them. They're saying, yeah, you got demons in your home, we're out of here. And now these clients are terrified, thinking there are demons in their homes, and they're calling us to fix their problem. It's like, you need to help us get rid of these demons. I'm like, who the hell told you had demons? And that's happened quite a bit as well.
Well, what's funny about that is once the public gets in their head that they've got demons, they're not listening to you, Ross. They're not listening to logic anymore. They are scared.
They are.
You
have to constantly, it becomes a counseling session because you have to talk these people off the ledge.
Absolutely.
And it's just like you have to walk through everything and just kind of show them. Hopefully you can debunk some of the things and show them how you debunked it, to ease their fears. And it's hard because so many people now just are, and I hate to bring it up, but you got a lot of these groups that are just running out there to do their investigation, is just running around with a ghost box. That's it. That's all they do.
It's unfathomable. Hey, if you want to go for a thrill, go to Waverly Hills, go to Gettysburg, go to Alcatraz, any of the hot spot tours. Take Ross's tour. If you're an enthusiast, take Ross's tour, take anybody's tour, right? Go do it on your own. But when you start affecting people, regular everyday people in their livelihoods, guys, I've had 3 or 4 people on the last couple of years because I love those real life ghost stories from people who have been attacked and have had some really bad stuff. It makes for great radio. It really does. And each one of those 4 people have stated the same thing. The biggest mistake they made, because they knew nothing about paranormal investigation, was they heard it from a friend that there are paranormal investigators out there. They went to Google. They chose the first website that came up because somebody is a web genius and has great SEOs, or search engine optimization. And that's how they found the team. And the team goes in there not knowing what they're doing. They stir up the crap so bad because everybody wants to provoke, and they do nothing to solve the problem. Now the people have to go back into their residence. All the things that have been conjured up have made it times 10 now worse for the homeowner. And the homeowner is stuck wondering what to do and how to deal with this now.
I've actually had clients tell me that they had a previous group come in and tell them that they should move. Like, how dare you put a family through that financial crisis when you have nothing to validate your claims of this being a demon?
Well, I mean, let's look into that too. So I'm pointing the finger at you, the Dead Files, because you've got the psychic medium lady that's telling everyone they have to do all these things that are a financial burden at the end of every episode. And I'm like, how irresponsible is that?
So I'm glad you brought that show up. we got contacted by an individual about a year and a half ago, and she said she was on one of the shows. She explained it to a T, and then I figured out exactly what show she was talking about. But apparently during the show, and while we were having our conversation, she was told by the psychic on the show that if they didn't move, they were going to die.
Mhm.
Oh my
So the episode comes out. Of course, they're infested with demons. Well, her partner passed about, I want to say she said like six or 7 months after the show aired. So she took that information that was given to her by the psychic and automatically applied that to the situation. No longer was it natural causes or some sort of a sickness or whatnot. It was a demon, and I was just flabbergasted. I found the episode, I watched it, and sure as hell she said that to the client, and I couldn't imagine putting that kind of a strain on somebody just to make a buck.
Mhm.
It's horrible.
Yeah, that is absolutely horrible. That just hearing that makes me sick to my
Mhm.
stomach.
Yeah,
Because that right there, I mean, we don't care that we're playing with people's lives,
Mhm.
whether it's
No.
television or anything.
Yeah.
You know?
So go ahead,
Jake.
Dave. I was going to say, so what I've done because of all of this stuff, and even though I'm probably what Ross would call the logical, like non-emotional type one, but I've adapted my ghost hunting so that when I deliver my reports, for one thing, I start and go methodically through every experiment with the client that I'm going to do and what it's checking for. But in those cases, I have learned like the occult stuff just to help people feel better about what's going on. So I've got stuff on making holy water, how salt works, the plants, how to properly sage. I do all that because I don't think you can just say, yes, there's activity, you have scared people, and you don't offer the solution, which happens a lot of times. Because a lot of times we'll get the psychic medium come through and clear out the spirits and stuff. I'm like, okay.
Well, I think the best thing you can do is educate the client the best you can. We're not Ghostbusters here. No
Mhm.
one is. All we try to do is document the phenomena and try to validate these encounters that people are claiming to experience. So in situations like that, when you're dealing with, trying to get the information onto your clients, and obviously you're dealing with situations now where a lot of them have been terrified by the idea that they believe that it's haunted, or some group has come in and told them they're dealing with demons that are out to kill them. Now you have to deal with the psychological aspect of it. And sometimes it's almost as simple as the placebo, Hey, if you take this pill, it'll make it all go away. And if they believe it, it'll all go away.
Mhm.
once that seed's been planted, yeah.
Yeah.
I keep potting my microphone down because I have the forest fire helicopters flying on by.
Oh.
I don't
Oh,
want
wow.
that to wreck the audio. So now I'm trying to talk and I'm like, why can't I hear myself? What's going on? What am I doing? Yeah. So the Angry Ghost Hunter, we have Ross Allison, we have Casey Goodwin stepping in for MERLE tonight, who is in the chat room. MERLE.
Miss you,
And-
buddy.
And Jacob Rice, who is wearing the cap backwards tonight. Yeah, I don't know. I tried to make
It's
something
not
out
a
of it.
good.
It
It's
didn't
not a
work.
good hair day. However, I will promote the new team. Hopefully, you'll get an endorsement.
Hold on. There it is. The Kraken.
Kraken.
I'm going to need you to do some shopping for me down there because my
Okay.
son loves the Kraken. That's his team. First time he heard the name, he's like, "That's my team, Dad."
I did vote for that one. I will say when they
I
were
like it.
Poland, I did vote
Great
for it.
name. Great name. But instead of talking hockey right now, because the Kraken had a pretty good week, let's get into it's that time of the night, Jacob, where we are going to get into failed equipment on the
Yes.
Ghost Hunter side. Let's get into it. What do you got for us tonight? Which piece of gear are you going to tear to shreds?
Yeah, I'm gonna tear it to shreds. It's the K2. When you've seen it on all the ghosty shows, it's one of the most popular gadgets used. It's used to detect electromagnetic field anomalies, EMF field anomalies. And you've seen all the shows going around with the little green light. and it flickers when that means a spirit is nearby and may want to violently touch you, push
Or
you, shove
demon.
you. A demon from hell. Yes. So guys, I mean, first things first, when it comes to the rigor of your ghost hunting gear, just so you know, I have the official EMF safe MERLE meter, K2 meter. And in the instructions, nowhere does it say it
What?
detects ghosts. Yes. We have
What?
instructions. Yes, there's lots of
Come
knockoffs.
on.
Really? Yep.
Come on.
So
You're just breaking our hearts there right
I
now.
know. I mean,
Or-
let me tell you about the Jake Rice reality check. It's a bitch. So when you're going through, it's giving you your ranges for all of your handheld appliances and stuff. But nowhere does it say it detects ghosts. And for one thing, we don't even know if ghosts really generate an electromagnetic field. So why are you counting on it so much? But just wait, before we get into a couple things, gotchas, you got to know this can pick up regular electronics from 12 feet. The other thing that makes it kind of a bust for ghost hunting is that, we need some accuracy. As we're talking about, we need a lot of data points. So when you look at these ranges on here, that's not very accurate. There's some wild ranges. Considering pretty much anytime you get over 10, it's going to be a man-made appliance. But for one thing, when a ghost shows up, we don't even know what a proper EMF range is. So there you go. I'll hand it over to you guys, but I'll tell you, when you're done with your bit on the K2, I can tell you about a series of experiments I ran with this last fall with some of my gadgets to test their accuracy.
Well, let me say one thing. People don't realize that these are popular on ghost hunting shows because it allows the camera to see the reading from a distance. It's so much harder for the cameras to see the numbers on a lot of the basic EMF detectors that a lot of us might use on ghost hunting. So that just makes it more easier for the camera to see those readings. And you're right. If you're going to be serious about ghost hunting, you want the numbers. You don't want the ranges. So yeah, and there's a lot of false readings when you get those K2 meters. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a few in my toolbox, but I use them for experiments. I think it's fun if you can set one on a chair and say, hey, if there's somebody here, sit in the chair. It goes off, hey, it might be something intelligent. You never know. But I do not depend on them for an investigation.
I'm going to go against the grain here a little bit.
Okay.
And you guys are going to probably, stomp me and not allow me to ever investigate with you guys again. But I will say this. I'm a fan of the K2 meter for two reasons. All right. Number one, when we do our tour here at the local museum, they're cheap enough pieces of equipment that you can buy a lot of them and put them in your clients' or your guests' hands. And if you were in an environment where you could tell what's happening and those lights go off, it really creates a really cool atmosphere for the tour. That's one thing I do appreciate about the K2 meter, because
Entertainment purposes.
entertainment purposes, absolutely.
I will not complain about that whatsoever.
Okay,
Good for you, Dave.
but number two, and I will say this, all right. And I know there are other pieces of gear that you guys don't like, and I don't care for some of them, but I think that every individual actually has gear that works for them. Okay. For instance, I'm not a believer in the ghost box. I know you guys aren't either. I have real skepticism with that. Skepticism. Anyways, anyways, Bill Hauser, who's a good friend, and you know Bill as well, Ross. Okay.
Yeah.
He has proven to me time and time again that it works for him. Right? That he can get results out of that. Now,
Well, wait a minute, because I have to bring up the fact that a lot of these devices are manipulated for entertainment
Easily.
purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So, if it's working for him, I have to question the fact, what is he using? Because, like I said, with ghost boxes, they're using voice recognition software, so they're repeating what they hear. They're using GPS, so it knows exactly where it's at. And sometimes they can have a bank of words that they'll say when it's triggered in certain locations, especially these very popular locations. And
Well,
now I've just learned, through, one of my side projects, Paranormal Hack, is that they're also picking up CB radio waves as well. So that means that somebody could be a mile away watching this ghost hunt live through a ghost box and start talking on their CB radio, and they'll pick it up on their spirit box.
I'll give you 3 examples, Bill, for me that really made me wonder what's going on. Number 1, my last name is like, hold on, let me get in camera. It's about that long. My real last name. Scott is my middle name. All right. And that came out. I know there are very few people in the province of British Columbia who have my last name. And when it came across my last name, right across the ghost box, that one sat well with me because my last name is long, it's Ukrainian, and 9.5 times out of 10, nobody knows how to pronounce it.
Now, don't get me wrong. One of the things that people need to understand that the theory behind ghost boxes does come from a true phenomena, from RVP, which is radio voice phenomena. And it was believed that spirits were communicating through dead radio stations, but it wasn't something like cycling through different stations. It was just on a dead station, and then something would come through. So that is the root of this. Now, I'm not saying that is not possible. There are many different theories we need to be testing out there. But ghost boxes are too suggestive, and now they're too manipulative.
I agree. Well, when we're in the middle of the forest where there's absolutely no one around, all right, and we get the name of a person from a plane crash site come through clear as day, that is weird too.
Right.
Very weird.
Does paranormal phenomena happen at times? Yes.
Absolutely.
Can we explain everything? No.
Yeah.
So, maybe he's got something that's legit. I'd like to believe that.
But that's what I'm saying. Like in the whole roundabout conversation, I do agree that for certain people, that piece of gear that may not work for you or that you don't trust may be working for someone else because they're one way or another connected to it.
In that case, that's psychic phenomena then. That's not ghosts.
Helping to channel.
Right.
I was just going to suggest, it could be a form of PK where the observer is manipulating the device without the knowledge of them. I mean, I've been part of several experiments with Michael White's group on that particular phenomena. And what's great about Michael's experiments is he writes out a detailed plan of events. Once we do the experiment, he looks at all that data and then he puts it up on his website. Now I think he's putting them up on Facebook. But what's beautiful is you can take the experiment, and anybody who's got the piece of equipment that we were experimenting with can recreate the same experiments. And I want to say he found at one point on one piece of equipment that there was some compromise. As far as the way it was responding based on the observer who was using it.
But I will say, if we go back, even with any of these gadgets, so normally even though I rip something apart, I always say there's a way you can use it in a more legitimate way, more controlled way. So what Ross was talking about with these things, like they're great for trigger objects. You put them out on the table, right, with like a teddy bear, whiskey, playing cards, see if you get something to flare. It's just this thing picks up a lot of anomalies, so that's the whole thing, and the world is filled with anomalies. When I did my experiments in the fall, I had my K2, I had my MERLE, the 8704-R REM-ATDD, my Eddy Plus, and I set them out on my table and I just recorded, and you better believe they were always picking up anomalies. So that's the other thing you got to put is really at the end of the day, we're using a lot of home and garden equipment, okay? And home renovation equipment for ghost hunts, all right? So you really have to take that into account that, you just might have picked up a random occurrence of a flickering light. But Dave, to your point with the ghost box, I would say always record the session. and listen when you play back, because I used to use ghost boxes, never the apps or anything like that. And what I heard in the moment, I thought I had something. When I played it back, that was not what I was hearing. So I know in that case, it could have been a legit one, but I would say every time you use one, record it so you can play it back, treat it like an EVP session, have peer review done. And I'm not going to push a gadget, but Ghost.Stop does make a spirit box that you can put a chip in and record what was being said.
And that is the biggest difference between enthusiast and, where are you here?
Oh.
Investigator.
So that's kind of my rant. I will say, when it came to the Eddy Plus, I live close to Mount Rainier. It was picking up every single little micro quake.
I think that you just stuff your pants full of pennies, and that's the reason why the K2 doesn't work for you.
That's true. I am the doubting Thomas of a ghost by far.
Gentlemen, we only have about 4.5 minutes here before we got to wrap up this edition of The Angry Ghost Hunter. It's a show that's flown on very, very fast here. Ross Allison, Jake Rice, and, of course, our special guest tonight, Casey Goodwin, filling in for the working Merle.
Merle, we miss you, bro. Miss you, bro.
Yeah, he sent me a message. He's angry that he missed. He's the angry ghost hunter tonight. Merle. And, gentlemen, your final thoughts on, let's finish up with taboo in the paranormal between enthusiast and the professional investigator. How do we bridge the gap? Ross, let's start with you.
Well, a couple things I want to bring up. When it comes to paranormal drama, you guys don't get involved in it. Just ignore it and move on. Focus on what you need to focus on with your team and your research. Now, when it comes to, determining whether you're a thrill seeker or an actual paranormal investigator, and it's like they said, you can start out as a thrill seeker and become an actual paranormal investigator. But it really determines on those key questions, sitting down and asking yourself, what am I really looking for? And what is it going to take for me to validate my experience? Because if you're just looking to have things thrown at you, getting scratched and being forced out of the house by unseen entities, then you're probably in the wrong field. Do a ghost tours, hang out in a haunted hotel, enjoy those thrills, but don't get clients involved.
Very true. Jacob, let's go to you. You get the final word for yourself.
Yeah, so with the enthusiasts, go ahead, have fun, take the tour, spread the love of paranormal investigation. But when you start working with people, we'll call it the innocent civilians, that's when you need to slow down. You need process. You need to understand things, because someone can get hurt, as we've mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. And Casey Goodwin, thank you so much for filling in for Merle tonight. Your final word on paradrama.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Reach out to people. There are a lot of enthusiasts out there that have a genuine interest in furthering the field. And if they want to put in the work and not just go on the ghost hunt, then, help them, take them under your wing, recommend books and abstract articles. And
Ross Allison, Casey Goodwin, Jacob Rice, thank you for another great edition of The Angry Ghost Hunter. We will talk to you again in August. We'll get the date for everybody here, which will be Wednesday, August 25th. So that'll be our next edition of The Angry Ghost Hunter right here and only here at Spaced Out Radio's YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/ Spaced Out Radio. We really do appreciate each and every one of you coming on in. This is why we bring in the experts. This is why we bring in the guys. I know they hate that word expert. I don't care. I'm the host. I'm allowed to say it. All right. This is why we bring in people in the know. This is one of the only ways that we are going to bring these subjects to light. And you may agree with them. You may not agree with them. But the main thing is we are talking about them and we are opening up the conversation on how to improve the paranormal field in general, because we have a lot of mysteries to solve. And just imagine, with the brain power that so many people in this field have, how much more we could be ahead in this field in solving those mysteries if we decided to work together. Once again, Thank you for attending the Angry Ghost Hunter with Jacob Rice, Casey Goodwood, and the legendary Ross Allison, and that nice pointy beard of his. Coming up next in about 1 hour here on Spaced Out Radio, we have Andrew Saporito. We are going to be talking holographic Earth, holographic moon. Maybe the moon's made of cheese. I don't know. But we're going to find out in 1 hour's time when we launch Spaced Out Radio. Gentlemen, thank you for a great episode of the Angry Ghost Hunter, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Awesome.